All right, we're going to talk fantasy football today. I'm getting a little closer. He's bringing in for the thing. So we could talk. I mean, and it's to your point, it's different for different leagues based on how it's set up, but draft strategies, things you need to do to win your league. And then we'll go from there. We can talk about sleepers, up and comers, busts, whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess in winning your league and draft strategies kind of is one and the same. So, and this is, again, based on our league, but what are your, why don't you dive into what you find to be successful draft strategy for you when you're the pick? First of all, we have a smaller league. We have an 8-team league, the one that we play in, because we're going on like 20 years here.
Yeah.
We don't do 2 QBs. Everybody's loaded. It's high points. So we could have increased the size of the league, but again, it's the same guys that have been in this for about 10 years. There's kind of a little private, league going on here that we really don't want to bring anyone in.
We hate everybody in a very friendly way.
Right, but I mean, at the end of the day, it really shouldn't matter because it's it's even playing field. Everybody's loaded in our league usually, so it's like then it becomes who gets hurt, who doesn't get hurt, who does the best on the wire, and things like that.
Yep.
So that said, we have it pretty evened out in terms of scoring for all the players, and we do a PPR league, half point per carry for the backs, 1 point per reception for the receivers, and you're talking 2 running backs. What do we do? 3 receivers, 1 flex, 1 tight end, 1 quarterback, 1 D, 1 kicker. So
1 defense too.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, like it's toggled in years past. Like, there was for the most part, usually you're looking at running backs early. But, in the past few years, the receivers really have taken a jump up to get in there. Right. Now we're kind of getting
balanced.
Back to that. You need to go running back first.
Yeah, I think the first thing you got to do on any fantasy league, and this is the thing, is like, we were listening to a fantasy show on the radio just the other day, and what was kind of interesting was he's like, oh, I got all these fantasy things I got to worry about. He's like, I got a PPR league, I got a half point PPR league, I got a no PPR league, and then I got my top 200, my top 100. I got all these different things. I think the most important thing you need to understand is your point structure. And what I've loved about our league is we started our league a long time ago, and it was very traditional. The league was traditional in this way, where if you weren't going 2 backs in your first 2 rounds, you were in trouble, because that's the way most fantasy football groups started. And what we did, I thought, which was fun, and again, this is to each their own, but we really flattened out the point system to make all of our positions of value. So our draft strategies could really
keep in
evolve.
mind that wasn't 1 year. I mean,
this was over probably 8-9 years when we got there.
We kept, every year manipulating the point structure to even it out, so you're not like, a quarterback isn't just like throwing up 40, 50, 60 points a week. Again, we're a high point league, but we definitely adapted that over time.
Yeah, so I think your first thing with any fantasy football is you really must understand the structure of your league, because if you don't, then you get left out in the cold, so to speak. Now, again, the great part about our draft strategy is in our league that I like, but again, to each their own, is that you can start with a different strategy. You have to understand what positions in your league, which I think it's pretty common that it's going to be your tight end, your kicker, and your defenses can be moved around throughout the season. It also depends on how many teams you have, obviously we mentioned, but the second part is how many people can you keep on a bench? Because you have to understand what's going to be out there for you in the future when things go sideways. And
that's why last year I threw out let's increase bench size by a slot.
Yeah.
So that we have, because you're seeing more and more guys from running back, receiver, as well as a tight end and a quarterback that you might need to bring in.
Yep. Yeah. And it's also, when you lose, because to me, to be a winning team, I think I mentioned this earlier, you need to hit on your first 3 rounds, solid. You need to get consistency. I think consistency will always be the manner, like where you're not shifting around. And then I also do believe you need to hit on 1 or 2 guys, either in later rounds or on the waiver wire, that become studs for you. So, for example, for me, I took a chance later on. Actually, I picked him up after, right at the end of the season, or at the end of the preseason, was picking up James Conner. Now, I had no illusions that he was going to do what he did, or delusions, I guess is the word, not illusions.
Either or.
But at the same time, it was that is Le'Veon Bell going to show up at the last minute, where we had somebody that took a Le'Veon Bell, I think, in the 3rd round, and
Matt.
Matt, and he ate that.
And we're in our, it's a keeper league. This, we've done it before, and we went away with it. Now we're going back to it.
Yep.
And I actually just emailed him, and I'm like, listen, he's like, well, this is when I emailed those draft lists.
It was
he's
what
like,
he drafted.
This is where we ended. It's not who he drafted. So like, I can't keep Le'Veon Bell. I said yes.
Yeah.
Because that's the way it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just common sense. I don't mean to be.
Well, we do need to send out the end of the year, which we didn't do. I
talked to him about that,
yeah.
and we discussed that. I mean, that was the question. He's like, well, you can make it harder for folks and not let them know who the keepers are, or who your not the keepers, where your draft position is.
Yep.
And my point is no, you need to let them know. They
And
need
the
to be able to
NFL,
make an
well, the
educated
NFL
guess.
knows what the draft order is before the draft.
At the end of the day, his whole quandary of not keeping Le'Veon Bell, it's the same thing. Like, he could have rode him just sit in the pine just to keep him as a keeper.
Right.
That's a strategy, knowing that we have a keeper league. He decided not to.
And say he's coming back next year at the
That's
worst.
That's his deal. I feel the same way about people knowing that their draft positions before before you draft and give the keeper, so you can pick your keeper based on your draft position.
Yep. And there is, and I think this goes back to know your draft points, because the key to everything is consistency. I happened to win the season last year, which has been a long time since I've done well. I lost the playoff, but in our league, we also pay out for season and for playoffs,
Right.
so that's a little bit different for us. Just because you want to reward the long haul.
Right.
But the reality
playoffs
was
for 2 weeks.
right. We go with a thinner bench probably than most, and we have obviously a light league and 8 people. That's probably the minimum anybody's going with. So there is players out there, but you have to understand that so you can understand how you're going to get consistency. Because to me, why I haven't liked the PPR leagues is that you pray for the blow up, like it goes into those receivers that who's going to get the 50-yard catch. They might only get 4 catches, and you get, so the PPR doesn't really, hurt or help you there. But at the same time, what happens when somebody gets, 60 yards, but actually contributes, 6 catches? They're moving the chains. It devalues, well, in past history, it had devalued like a slot receiver, even though slot receivers now play a totally different type of game and do
Not
put up big
having
yards.
PPR?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So
right.
you got to understand what that is in your league to be effective. So we can talk about draft strategies, we can talk about talented players, but you have to understand the value of your positions and how to stay consistent in those positions, regardless of whether you're heavy point people or not, in order to be there. And I think that's going to be true across all draft leagues. It's all about how can I consistently produce. You don't have to, like in our league, if you don't blow up at any position, but you're consistent, you will win. And I think that's true about a lot of leagues, because there's so many leagues where you have 3 guys that are non-producers in a game, and you could have a blow-up guy, and you may not get lucky. We all love our Mahomes, our 6 touchdown,
I've
games
had it
and
happen.
stuff.
I've had enormous days. Some guys have their best days of the season, but other guys just crap the bed, and then I'm just, it's all for naught. So, again, that's why we balanced it took years, but we got the point system balanced to where we like it. And, some people prefer the standard over the PPR. I like the PPR because I think that's, especially in today's game for the running backs where teams are using multiple running backs. I think that if you're in a draft position where you can get a back from a team that is the 3-down back, a la Saquon Barkley, well, that's a strategy that you have to, keep in mind. That guy, the workload. You know, the touches, those are points you've got to take into consideration.
Yep.
You know, I mean, so, and some backs will get more carries and some, and we'll get it on the carries and the yards, and some backs are the touchdown scorers.
Yep.
So, all right, well, we'll talk a little bit about, I'd love to talk about it in more depth, but we're before the season, so we're only going based on what we see and know right now instead of what's actually happening on the field and stuff. So that's why it's more of the draft talk rather than the reality. In my mind, I've done very well in fantasy football.
Yep.
I'm always in the playoffs. For me, it's always about playing the wire. That the draft is so important, but you win fantasy football by playing the waiver wire.
I think particularly, I will say, I agree with you, and I will particularly say, one, hitting your early season guy that nobody uncovered, that you got the guy that's going to blow up that you happen to pick up first. But then what I will say is, as you get halfway through the season and the bye weeks start coming, you have to start making some tough choices about who you're going to keep and who you're not. And you end up releasing players where you're because you got to fill other positions in order to stay consistent. So I would say the second half of the season where you're playing the wire for matchup is probably the most challenging thing everybody has to do. And it's where you have to have a lot of success too there as well. So I think it's a good point.
Yeah.
I think no matter what type of league you have, the real challenge isn't to understand top to bottom in a position. Like, I don't think the idea that Mahomes being at the top of the quarterback position, I don't think whether you in any type of league you play, and I'll use him as an example, in a Drew Brees and, potentially an Aaron Rodgers, obviously him getting hurt, but that's true of anything. This league, just like the NFL, is all about injuries. The real challenge in drafting, and it goes back to what I said about understanding your league, is at what point do you take the chance and pull the trigger to get the number one quarterback at the sacrifice of another position that might have more value? It's where you insert that draft pick into your drafting that really is the big question. It's not whether Mahomes is your big gun and the guy you're going to go after, or Drew Brees, or any of these other, a Phillip Rivers. It's understanding when to pull the trigger on that guy at the sacrifice of a position, because if Pat Mahomes does not represent an even share of your points, do you draft, if you're a running back heavy league, for example, do you draft a third running back before you start going quarterback? Or do you insert that number one quarterback? Can he offset that point difference of the fact that you're not going to get a shot at the next running back and your running back points are going to dip dramatically? So again, that is where I think everybody has to make their decisions of do or die. But I think we can talk about the structure of each position in and of itself and feel pretty confident that we'll be accurate across all types of leagues.
Sure. And in terms of, when you draft somebody like a quarterback, to your point, that's something that let's discuss a little bit, as well as, the kicker and the defense and, because wide receiver and running back are going to get most of the talk. Okay. So we're going to take a sec and then we'll jump back into that. Okay. So we're back in here. We're going to go position group to talk about it, but based on what we were speaking just a moment ago on, my thinking on the ancillary positions, and I'm not saying tight end, because with players like Travis Kelce, he's a receiver. But in terms of defense and kicker, and I've gone back and forth over the years, because sometimes I believe that, like last year, I really did think Jacksonville was going to have a solid D. I didn't take him early, but it was something I was thinking about earlier than normal. Now
I did.
Now
didn't work out.
My point is this: I tell myself this every year as the year begins. Stop taking those two positions early. Take them in the last two slots, because at the end of the day, both kicker and especially defense, I play based on matchups. I could have the best defense in the league.
Yep.
But if I'm going against
Kansas
City, well, that week I may be looking to go grab another defense that's got a matchup against a crappy offense. Yep. So I say that to say is streaming the kicker and defense, in my mind, is the way to go. I just don't see the value anymore. And I'm one that I may end up out of 16 rounds pulling the trigger in round 13 or even 14 for defense. No, slap my hand.
Yep.
Sound effects. I need to not do that. I think it's a waste. Even if it's you're a flyer guy or a backup quarterback or a backup tight end that you're drafting, you know what? I don't care. Take them before them, because at the end of the day, you're going to probably do what I just said at some point in the year.
Yep.
Okay? So that's all I got to say about that. But let's dive into position groups. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, I'll add on kind of to what you said, and then I think we'll probably go traditionalist and maybe go running back. But I think a big point of that is with defense, like, for example, I will be the admitting person that I did take Jacksonville. and that.
You sure that wasn't just because they have your boy in the defensive backfield running his mouth?
No, it was that idea of, like, at what point do I take whether I take the risk or not? Because what made Jacksonville a good pick the year before last was that they got a lot of turnover luck, and on defense, turnover luck. And if you'd say right now, this year's version of Jacksonville is the Bears. Because if you look at the number of touchdowns the Bears defense scored, the sacks, the turnovers, Khalil Mack, they're going to be the sexy defensive pick. But when you look back traditionally at defenses, like you said, one that goes back to that matchup concept, and that is a position that you do play matchups more so than the consistency of other players. The chances of the Bears being that elite type defense are better than most, but comparatively speaking across the league and with matchups, it's not a sure thing. This year's Bears defense, meaning the team that gets all the turnovers, is probably going to be somebody else if you just look historically. So doesn't mean they're not going to be a good defense, doesn't mean they're not going to be worthy of a top 5 defensive pick, because certainly they are. It just means, are they going to be your consistent point producers? And so we'll get into defenses later as far as matchups, because you got to look at the divisions they play in, who they're against, and all that. So we'll get into that in a little bit. I think we can run into running backs, because we know that running backs, you got to be able to carry the mail in order to win in your league.
Correct.
So,
and then we go, again, it is based on your league. So it's going to be different for most leagues because of the point system. But in our league, half point per carry. So then, so that means, when you're drafting running backs, you're deciding, is this guy a 3-down back? Is he a guy who's not a 3-down back, but I could drop him in a flex position because he's going to get a lot of receptions? So I'm sorry. Go ahead. So let's talk a little about the backs.
So we're gonna have, like, probably, I think in really any position, you're gonna have probably 3 different levels. You want a guy that's on a strong offense and is gonna the best pick in probably any league, but certainly in PPR, is gonna be a guy that's on an extremely strong offensive team. Okay, so that's gonna be something you're gonna want to look at. So you're gonna want to go through your offenses and look at who's on an extremely strong team. Then, as part of that, you have to look at what percentage of the offense is that person going to have, and you got to balance those. So I'll give you an example. The Giants' offense is not predicted to be a juggernaut of an offense overall right now, but there is no denying the fact that Saquon Barkley is uber talented and is going to be the focal point of that offense.
Okay.
So barring an injury, even if that offense is sub top 10, then you are still going to get productivity out of them, because, and how you know that is because you watched him last year in a sub top 10 offense. He produced like crazy and was a fantastic pick. Then you can look at somebody like, and you can also look at someone like Ezekiel Elliott, who obviously we know we got concerns on holdout, and we'll get to that in a little bit, who is also a major focal point of that offense. But then you go into offenses where you can have some explosion depending upon how it plays out, like a Houston Texans offense, where you know that you've got a quarterback on that team that is a game changer. You got to look at it and go, okay, now you have less talented running backs on a team like that, but they've got to have a balanced offense for that offense to produce. So the question is, do they have somebody on that offense? So again, you're looking at different scenarios, and then you've got to look at guys, and you go back to an important point, which is really changed in pro football over the years, is the idea of the 3-down back. Because even in 3-down back skills, some offenses don't run 3-down backs. And I'll use Kansas City and in turn the Bears offense, because that's a Kansas City, it's an Andy Reid disciple there, where they love to interchange their players. They're tough to rely on. There's only a few people in those types of offenses that really kind of get it done at their position. And the tight end in Kansas City you're talking about is an example where even though that's a very much a spread the ball around, and we'll use an example, they paid big money for a receiver in Sammy Watkins, but Sammy Watkins may not be a reliable number one receiver in that offense like you might see in some other offenses. So you really got to understand that mixture and where all that's going to fall. So that being said, why don't you give me an idea of where you think, with those parameters all having to be considered, where is your top 5 on the running backs? Who is your number? Let's before we get to, we'll do top 5 is who is your number one running back with all those scenarios involved? If you have the number 1 pick in the draft, or you're going to take the number 1 running back, who you taking?
I'm taking Saquon.
Okay.
First of all, last season when he was a rookie, I actually called in to one of the fantasy football shows on Sirius XM. It was I think it was like Roto Grinders or something.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was Fantasy Alarm in the afternoon. And I asked them, because I am a Giants fan, and I prefaced on the phone that have had season tickets since '83. I live in Atlanta. Try to get up to 1 year, but I'm a diehard Giants fan. So I preface my statement by saying I'd love no more than to see excellence for Saquon Barkley his rookie year. But if you remember last year, his ADP, based on the preseason draft rankings, and even when the draft came, he was a top 5, maybe close to top 3 running back, top 10 pick overall. That's what they slated him as a rookie. So my question when I called in is that something that they can validate? Because I love the Giants. Again, I want to see nothing more than for him to be really successful. But how often does that happen? There's a rookie running. I mean, look at this year. We'll dive into some of them, but none of the rookie running backs on the board. Now, granted, the crop is nowhere near as talented as Saquon, but the earliest one is going like maybe 3rd, 4th round, depending on the league, the size. So I say that to say, last year I was very reluctant. Now, he proved us wrong. The guys said that, yes, he's that worth it, and he was worth it, okay? But now I run into a little more reluctance again, and I will still stick with Saquon as my overall, but based on we lost Odell, Tate is out for suspension for 4 weeks. Sterling will be there, but he's playing with a broken thumb. The receiving core is depleted. I think the line will get better. My concern is, running the wheels off the guy. Everybody and their mother that plays the Giants, there's, as a defensive coordinator, your game plan will revolve around stopping Barkley, and that's probably going to be stacking the box most of the time, even though he can receive the ball. Okay? So that's my concern. That will diminish his value as a number 1 overall pick. That said, Saquon Barkley is my number 1 pick because he is everything that the Giants have.
I am not going to disagree with you on that point. I am going to restate your last point with a little bit more concern. That is where I go back to on your first 3 picks, you have to hit with consistency. The worst thing you can end up with overusage is a week 6, week 7 high ankle sprain or something to that effect because of the overuse and the beating that running back takes. And then you've seriously diminished the value of a first round pick, because part of what you have is you've got to have some balance in offense, because you want guys in the running back position running for big gains, running for stretches, and getting some level of rest involved in order to put them at the peak. So while I would say is you've got in that scenario incredibly high reward with a higher than average risk, because you are going with that focal point of the offense, but the focal point of the offense that is maybe without options. And that is, I would say, your danger in that area. But from a sheer skill and part of the lineup, I would agree with you that Saquon Barkley is definitely a number 1 pick. The number 1 pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if he's not the first person off the board in our league.
Yes, yeah. Now, granted, we had keeper picks, so we'll have to see. But yes.
Sip has him. So, and it's a round 1 pick too for Sip. So that's a decision to be made.
Right. Right.
So he'll lose his number one, his first round pick. But if he's the draft order comes and he's 8 of 8, well then that's if Barkley's going to not go 1, he's going 2 or 3. So if you're in the 8th slot, then it's worthy to give up your first round.
Right.
So, okay, so now I'll flip it back to you. So now that we've kind of identified Saquon, let's try to knock out like the top 5 in your mind. Who do you think the next person off the board would be from a running back perspective?
I think, again, this is probably where understanding your league and the PPR part of it, my feeling is going to be is the next 3 are pretty important, but I think in there's only one of them that I would say is going to take a serious hit depending upon how the negotiations work out. But I think in my mind, I'll give you my next 3. And then I'm going to talk about an order for them. I'm just going to do this in a random. I think your Alvin Kamara is going to be in there. Christian McCaffrey, I think those are 2 definites that are going to be top 4 running backs picked. Ezekiel Elliott ends up in there, but we have to see how this offseason plays out, because the simple fact is Ezekiel Elliott is very much like a Saquon Barkley in the focal point of his offense. Same risk. In fact, another running back I took, he ended up being very durable and doing well for me last year, but he is certainly a risk to be a Le'Veon Bell. I don't know that that's going to play out, so you're going to have to wait up till draft moment. To me, if I was to put them in an order this year, I'm going to go with, at this given point, I'm going to go Christian McCaffrey number 2. And the reason why I would probably go Kamara before him. But the problem with that is I don't know the status, with that offense and defense well enough yet to worry about where they're going to be offensively. Is there going to be some regression? But he is a touch guy. In a PPR league, he's awesome too. So I would go McCaffrey, Kamara, and then I'm going to go Elliott with the understanding that he's going to be available week 1. Those would be my next. Now, when I get down to the 5th running back, David Johnson has been a top 5, ranking coming into the season for probably 3 years now. I'm not a believer in him. Not going to be a believer in that offense. I think it's a dangerous offense. It's a guy that is going to be susceptible to injury, especially with a rookie quarterback. To me, I think I've really got to look. You can run a challenge with Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is going to be, there is some risk there because you just don't know. I think that's an offense that's going to be better. I do like Sam Darnold. I think he's gonna do some things.
Sam Darnold.
Yeah, James Conner as a number 5 back, he definitely proved that he can carry the mail last year. But that offense dynamic has changed. The question is Juju going to be the next AB, and are they going to have enough passing offense? Now you got Ben Roethlisberger. They're going to sling it. So, and then you got Joe Mixon. That team's, the problem with Joe Mixon is that team's going to be probably terrible this year. And that's he to me is the epitome of focal point of an offense that's at major risk for not surviving. So I guess if I had to pick one right now, I'd probably go Le'Veon Bell as the 5th running back, just because I do believe he's going to get that. So you tell me, what does your 2 through 5 look like?
Okay, and I mean it's not going to be far off from what you are. I would probably go Kamara too, and the sole reason is the quarterbacks.
Yep.
I just not only do you have to worry about a Cam Newton stealing carries from McCaffrey, but we have to worry about the health of Cam. And let's be honest, and I think, I don't dog Cam Newton, the guy. I think he's a good player for what he is, but he's not Michael Vick, but he's not a great passer, even when he's healthy. He's not. He can throw a ball. He's got an arm, but you got to be accurate. You have to have touch, and that's one thing with Cam especially. He has no touch on his ball. Like you watch last year, you watch a Patrick Mahomes, scrambling, change the ball. He's a right-hander from his right to his left hand and sling it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's touch, dude. And that's something that I don't think Cam Newton has. And as a result, having a Drew Brees and Brees who can sling it, but he's also getting older. Okay, so you may see them, and Mark Ingram's not there either. So I think that's you might be scared. This is Kamara's third year. He's not a rook anymore, and he's been successful. I think he's ready to handle the workload. So mine would be Kamara 2, McCaffrey 3. Okay? So 4, and I know you said you prefaced it based on Zeke playing the first game. I'm sorry, bro. We can't do that. Because Zeke's
I can do whatever I want.
He ain't going to play the first game. And you are seriously staring down a Le'Veon Bell incident. And if you want to really know how it feels, pick up the phone and call Matt. Because he sat on his ass all last year. And I saw other people that did that were not pleased with it. They actually said something on that guy, Jeff Manns, I listened to. Right. They were talking about a statement. They played some audio that Le'Veon Bell cut this year saying he wished he could have told his fantasy owners that he wasn't going to sit out so they didn't lose points or money. Well, wait a minute. Well, so you knew you were going to do that. It wasn't like you were playing a game.
Right.
Okay, you knew it all along. Okay, so don't feed me that BS fodder. Okay.
Right.
That said, I don't believe Zeke will be playing the first game. I don't think he'll play the first month. I think he could be gone the whole year, and I am taking that in consideration. I will retract my previous order if it were the fact that we know he's going to play the first game. If we knew he was going to play game 1, Ezekiel Elliott would be my number 2 back. I know he is not at this point where we are right now in this state. A few weeks, 4 weeks away, he's just not. He's not going to be ready. So I'm bouncing him down. So who's my 4 and 5? I like Le'Veon Bell. I think it's an offense. My problem with that is, and it might be more from a receiver concern for the Jets. Okay, but let me pull up the Jets' schedule, especially like the first 5 weeks, because if I'm not mistaken, it's pretty brutal, and that's as much as I want to go Le'Veon, I think he's rested. I don't. Okay, so here we go. So they play the Bills. The Bills will have a good defense this year. Mark my words.
Okay.
Maybe not worthy drafting ahead of the last slot or two.
No,
but
I follow you.
They'll be good. Okay, that's a good defense. Okay. The Browns on Monday Night Football, their defense is definitely getting better. Then they've got the Patriots. Then they've got the Eagles. Then they got the Cowboys. The best thing about the Cowboys last year was their defense is young and was great at the end of the year. Then they've got that was the Cowboys. Then they got the Pats again. Then they have the Jaguars. So you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Most fantasy leagues are like 13 weeks before you hit the playoffs or something, 12 weeks. So 7 of those you are going against some stout defenses, or presumably. That concerns me, having to go again in a new team with Le'Veon Bell.
Can I ask you a question so we can stay on that point? Okay, so I get your point where you're going with that. So is your belief then, let's just take those first 5 games, do you believe that they are solely going to make the Jets win by passing in those games? You believe that's going to be the MO of those defenses, is to come out and just say, I'm just shutting down the run, and this second-year quarterback's going to have to? And if so,
no, but I do believe it's going to be.
Do you think Darnold can? Okay.
I think he'll be. I definitely don't think he's garbage. I need to see this year. I expect a decent progression from him this year. Okay. I mean, I think that he could be all right. But if he doesn't, then it could end up like a situation with the chosen Rosen.
Okay.
But that said,
so who's your 4?
I do think teams are, I don't know. Teams are going to probably play it as they see. How has Bell come out after being a year off? If he looks the same to form, they're going to start to stack the box. They do have some receivers. I mean, Robbie Anderson's out there. They got a new one, nobody superstar, but can be solid guys. And that Herndon kid, their tight end, is supposed to be good. He could be a breakout player.
Okay.
That said, I think that the secondary matchups that those receivers on the Jets are going to have to face in those first 7 weeks is going to suck too. So I don't know what they're going to do. So
4 and 5, buddy. You told me who you're not doing.
You suck. You suck.
Inquiring minds want to know.
I know, and I'm just, I'd probably go Bell for,
Okay.
just because of the type of talent he is. Having a year off, I think in some people's minds might not be a good thing, and I kind of alluded it to sounding like that earlier, but I kind of think that it's going to help him.
Okay.
I think the year off will help him.
All right, so who's your 5 then?
All right, so I said Bell was 4, so... Oh, man. 5 for me is probably going to be... I don't know. It's a toss-up because I'm as concerned with the Melvin Gordon situation as much, if not more, the Zeke.
Yep,
So that's why I'm going to have to move him.
Well, he's
down.
already asked for a trade. That's not a good sign.
That's not a good sign. So and you mentioned David DJ. I just don't know yet, and that's very pass-heavy offense, even though he catches the ball. Mixon, it's either going to be for me. For me, it's going to be Gurley. Everybody's down on Gurley. I'm not. Okay. Everybody's like handcuff him with Henderson. I don't think that's a bad move. But it's Todd Gurley, man. Until he shows us
top 5. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
I would put him at 5.
All right.
I would put him at 5. Based on it's good for me. It's in my mind. The toss-up is between him and Dalvin Cook.
All right.
That's where my toss-up is.
Okay.
And I mean, just based on previous year's production, besides the fact that there's some knee issues, I'm going to go Gurley. So my top are Saquon, Kamara, McCaffrey, Le'Veon, Gurley.
Okay.
That's my top 5.
Okay. All right. Now,
Comments, questions before we kind of pause and go on a different position group.
well, I think what we should do this too as well with each position, and we got to be a little bit quicker with this, but give me 2 guys who are legitimate potential to be outside of the first 2 rounds of running back that you see as potential top running backs. Give me 2 breakouts that are going to be every week potential every week starters.
Outside of the first 2 rounds.
Yep.
Of if it were a straight running back or just all overall.
No, running back. We're going to do it by position. We'll do it position by position. So 2 running backs.
So you're talking about running backs 11 through 20.
Yeah, roughly. Yep.
Or no, I'm sorry. No.
16,
17. So 17 through 20.
Yeah, with the understanding
20,
though, receivers are going to be in there as well, and potentially even a quarterback. But I'm just saying, 3rd round and later.
So you're basically saying in a regular draft, someone that maybe in the 3rd round might still be out there that I would look at.
You don't necessarily that you hope they can be every week guys, but maybe are not.
All right. Well, this is going to be up for debate because of whether you think they'd fall that far, but I'll toss a few of them out at you.
Okay.
Fournette could fall. I think, I don't know that you're necessarily going to get the yardage with him. And yes, there's an injury concern, but you'll get touches and you'll get touchdowns with Fournette.
Okay.
Another guy that I'm a little bit interested in, or I'm very interested in, the question is whether he falls that late, is Connor. Does he fall to that far? That's someone to definitely consider.
I'd venture to say he'd probably be top 2 rounds.
Probably. And then the next guy as well, Nick Chubb.
Okay.
I think he'll go he'd be top 2. But if he fell, around there, now from there, I kind of look at it as you're getting a little more discreet. It's kind of up in the air. 3 guys beyond that I definitely think will fall beyond the first 2 rounds that, in my mind, are a question, but somebody out of the group, if not, multiple, will do well. The first one's Aaron Jones from Green Bay.
All right.
I think that, you still have Aaron Rodgers. He's still a good quarterback. He doesn't have a lot of weapons. We're going to see what happens with the line because that was a big problem of theirs was their offensive line for all, Rodgers was on his back and got hurt. But that said, if they get back to form from the passing game, that's going to open up whirlwinds for Aaron Jones, and he is a tough bastard, man. Like he's strong guy and little.
All right.
Another guy that I would I would say, and a lot of this has to do with a lot of the speak I'm hearing right now is Kerryon Johnson in Detroit. I'm hearing a lot that he looks great. You're talking about he'll probably be a 3. He's their back. He's probably a 3-down back. So when you're talking about PPR leagues, people that are going to get the majority of the workload, there's that guy. And then the third of the 3 is the whole Derrick Henry situation.
Okay.
Is that going to work out? Certainly people have been waiting to see Henry do what he did like at the end of last season, especially over the course of like 3-4 games where he went nuts since he got drafted.
Yep.
I mean, he's a Heisman winner.
Yep.
But we hadn't, I take that back. There was here and again, you might see a run or two or a game that he might, whoa, that's what we expected. But it was never consistent on any level, from the coaches drawing up plays to give him that ability, potential, to him making it happen with his own ability.
Okay.
So those are 3, I think, after 2 rounds that might be people to look at as strong candidates. I'll throw one more in there, and that's Chris Carson. Okay. We know that the Seahawks, especially last year, are running the crap out of the ball. I know Rashad Penny was drafted last year. They're talking a lot about him. He's going to get some of the workload, so Carson is not going to be your every down back, but he's still the lead back. He did pretty well, and he may be somebody else.
It's a run-centric offense, even with the quarterback.
So go ahead. Now, your thoughts, your input.
Well, let's just put this out there. We understand that math classes at Clemson obviously must have been very weak, because I said 2 and he gave me like 6. But that's all right. We love him for that.
I didn't hear. It's selective hearing. I live in a house of all women. That's I'm used to.
All right, so I'm going to give you my 2 picks, and then I'll give a brief description why, and then we can move on to the next. You stole one of my last ones. I'm gonna go with.
See, that's why you had to make the comment about only 2 picks, because I took your shit.
Well, when you picked every running back on every team, it made it a little tough. So I will go with my 2. One you already mentioned is Derrick Henry, and I'm gonna give you my rationale behind Derrick Henry. Last year at the end of the year, I had him. Last 6 weeks, he killed it. I'm not looking for the 3 touchdown games, the 200 yards. What I believe about that offense is you got 3 major components that are going to impact that offense. Number 1, they have fallen out of love with their quarterback. They are not going to. Marcus Mariota is on the fence. I don't see Marcus Mariota getting re-upped. So I think they're going to have to run ball control for that reason, number 1. Number 2, they're going to be in a division with a couple of high-powered offenses in the Texans and the Colts, and they are going to want to. You're going to want to drain the clock, and they're going to have to do that with power running. So I think that's going to be another big thing. But I also go back to consistency, and I think he's going to run with consistency. I think you're looking at an 80 to 120 yards a game average for him, and I think you're looking at a guy that's going to get the ball around the goal line, so you're going to get some touchdowns out of him when they do that. So and that included is Vrabel right now needs to win games. Vrabel's in year 3 or is it year 4? But he's past that point where if he doesn't prove that he can command that division to some degree, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. So I don't think there's that faith. And go back to there's no faith in Mariota to carry the load. So Derrick Henry's my guy.
Okay.
My next guy, and this is kind of a favorite right now, but it's one I got a lot of knowledge in from just the fact that he's on my team, is going to be David Montgomery. I think the Bears offense has been looking for a player like that. And I don't want to go, people want to call him the Kareem Hunt position for that former Kansas City offense. I don't know that it's quite to that degree, but I think you're going to find as a flex player, he's going to be extremely consistent. He is a pass catcher, which that offense needs out of its backfield, the reason why they traded Jordan Howard. I love Jordan Howard. I think Jordan Howard is a very underrated back. He's not a fantasy killer, so we're talking fantasy, and I think that this brings flexibility. I know there's a lot of belief in Tariq Cohen, but I watched that offense very extensively last year. Tariq Cohen is I don't want to call him a gadget player, but he's going to be a shifted player. Tariq Cohen was out there a lot with Jordan Howard, and I think that's going to be the same case with David Montgomery. Now, his risk is he's 3rd on the depth chart. It's a preliminary depth chart only because they brought in Mike Davis, who is also a pass catcher. But they took their number 1 overall draft pick, and they got a lot of kudos for the draft, considering their first draft pick wasn't until the 3rd round. And I think they had the least amount of draft picks of anybody, and they still got B to B+ ratings without having a first or second rounder is pretty impressive. So it tells me a lot about what they believe in him as a. Well, it tells me what they believe in him.
I don't believe in that preseason bullshit.
No, but my point is, those are people that are looking at these players, and I guess my point is, there is an understanding and a belief within the Bears organization that this kid has the tools to play that role. So,
okay,
and again,
this
is, and this, and I'm
I'll
not,
believe you.
and
You're
I'm
a Bears
tell
fan.
you,
I'll believe you.
But I will tell you, if you're taking him in the first 2 rounds, you are at, particularly in the second round would be where I would see him potentially going on a high end. I think that would be a mistake, but he is the type of guy that in the second half of the season could end up being a keeper for the next year. He has that potential to him in that scenario, because you do have to look at it. So those would be 2 of my guys that I would look at, and I think are going to fall enough to make them value picks at the running back position. So
okay, well, let's stay on running backs. We'll stop and talk other draft positions, and possibly, just so this isn't elongated, maybe separate episodes. But that said, I want to stay on running backs because I want to talk more about what you're looking at there in terms of, you just brought it up, David Montgomery, rookie. So let's talk about rookie running backs.
Yep.
Okay, and who we think's gonna have any sort of impact, who we think is going to be a bust, where you might want to draft them. Is it something you draft real late as a flyer? Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about that. And you already touched on Montgomery. So let's go to the number 1 rated overall rookie running back, which is Josh Jacobs from Alabama. What are your thoughts?
Here's my thing. He, to me, is a very, very poor man's Saquon Barkley, and let me explain why. I still remember Jeff Garcia made this comment about Gruden when he was in Tampa, and he said, the fact is that Gruden does not like to marry quarterbacks. He only likes to date them. So he's not a real big, he's not a quarterback centric guy. And I'm not really sold on this idea that he's a believer in our buddy out there slinging the rock in Oakland.
Man, if you saw Hard Knocks the other night, let me interject. It wasn't Richard Seymour. There's one of the guys that is one of the commentators on NFL Network. He was an Oakland Raider a while ago. And he's talking to AB on the sideline because AB is hurt. And they're talking about Derek Carr, like when he came in and when he was a rookie behind Matt Schaub at Oakland. And they're like, oh, man, he can spin it, man. And they dropped, like, they said, man, it's like A-Rod out there. And I almost fell off the couch, okay? Derek Carr is not and will never be able to hold Aaron Rodgers' jockstrap. Might be a great guy, but to make a statement like that, knowing you're on Hard Knocks, knowing it's going to be broadcast on national,
who made that comment?
It was one of the guys from the NFL Network. I'll look it up.
All right.
But so he used to play for the Raiders. Okay,
I got you though. It's someone on TV.
It was just redonkulous that he said that about Carr. I mean, I think Carr's great. Maybe I have a little sour taste in my mouth because I'm a New York Giants fan, and his brother, we took him. One overall, he was a poo. That said, Derek Carr. Let's not go there. But okay, so go ahead. You were talking about the Raiders.
So that's kind of why I say he's a very, very poor man's Saquon, because I do think he's going to be a focal point of the offense. The real question is he ready to handle the load? He does not have the miles that the traditional Alabama running backs have, which has always been a concern for me. And you can go back to the Derrick Henrys. You can go back to
that's also
Mark Ingram, sort of, but they've had
a
lot
of the Alabama offense,
right.
They are, and you can't. I mean,
but that's a good thing to me.
It is, and you can't blame Alabama or the coaching staff. I mean, shit.
That's how they get.
They are always a minimum of 3, if not 4 or 5 deep of 4 to 5, mostly 5-star running backs.
Yep.
You got to get them in there at some point or another.
You do, but they've had some traditional carry the load, 20-plus carries a game, which is a lot for a college back, especially some of these college backs that ran the ball for 2-3 years. Some of them were getting north of almost 30 carries. That's not even in traditional in the NFL anymore. And when it does, you find that those are the running backs that are 3 to 4 years and then fall off a cliff. So that's the risk with him, is he's going to be the focal point, and is he physically ready to take that on with the offensive line that the Raiders have? And can they balance the passing attack? And will Gruden do that?
They got Richie Incognito over there, man. brought him in.
Who's he choking out today?
Yeah, no, he actually was like, if you watched it, he seemed like super nice. Okay, well, I don't want to dwell on each one specifically, but to your point, let me pose this question. I mean, assuming a B gets back in there sooner rather than later, and the other weapons
I understand he's actually on a quick recovery. He's got this new technique where he's going to actually put hot coals in his jock strap. It's a great thing. It's just,
awesome.
It's his next step.
Awesome. From cold to hot.
Yep.
One extreme to the next. My thing is this: if they've got weapons there now, I mean, Jared Cook is a decent tight end. They've got receivers on the field that they can use, and I think their offensive line will be decent. Not like a few years back when they were one of the top two, like the Cowboys. But if the offense is more prolific, which, based on what I saw from the Hard Knocks, could be.
Yep.
I saw way more throwing the ball than running the ball in that show during their practices. But if the offense is prolific, that can potentially open things up for Jacobs. And Jacobs is, I think he's a big guy. I don't think he's a between the tackles guy of being able to burst through a clogged up hole necessarily phenomenally. But if he has a little bit of space because he is quick and he's fast, his strides when he gets running are good, and he is shifty, he can shift gears. I think if he has a little space because the offense is prolific, it could help him out tremendously his rookie year. So let's talk about some of the other backs. You have Miles Sanders. The Eagles picked him up. Eagles also brought in Jordan Howard that you mentioned earlier, who I think will be great the first few games, actually. I think he's going to be their starter from what I hear him. First 2, 3, 4 games, he may be really – the way he's being – ranked in fantasy football, he may be somebody you can get in double-digit rounds.
All right, so let's maybe take it from a little bit different angle, and then maybe we can wrap this up. All right, so now running backs, and we'll probably say rounds 2 through 3. I'm gonna subtract 2 players from this. We're gonna subtract Melvin Gordon and Ezekiel Elliott, just given the contract situation. We'll pull them out because everybody's gonna have to make that determination as we get closer. But if we take those out, who are your second and third round running backs? Give me one. I said one. Give me one running back that scares the hell out of you and that you would totally stay away from, that could potentially be right now thought of as a second to third round running back.
I mean, I have some questions. You said one.
Well, I'm trying to cut the time down.
Okay.
Would you like me to go first? What do you think?
You said, no.
Okay.
You said second to third, or
yeah, because I mean,
second?
your first. I think your top 5 are going to be pretty in the ballpark.
I could give you. I have about 3 in my head, 2 for sure, but I'll give you one because you asked for it, ass face. Second, and I think this would be potentially second round. I don't know if he'd fall past that, but that's Joe Mixon.
Okay.
I'm worried, especially now with AJ gone, one less weapon, to take pressure off. Sure, Tyler Boyd looked good in AJ's absence last year, but I don't know that that's sustainable, and defenses can change it up based on around that. At the end of the day, I think was a lot was expected of Mixon in the past. I started to buy into it, thinking it would be that. I see what everyone was talking about when he was at Oklahoma. I haven't seen it yet. I really haven't. There's been like a play or two, but again, to me, in the NFL, it's not just those explosive plays here and again. It's explosive plays often and decent plays on a consistent basis, like running, like being a very solid back consistently and sprinkling in explosive plays, like at least one a week. Yep. Okay. I just don't know about that offense. I think Andy Dalton's done already. I don't know their new coach. Who knows? I mean, I don't think their defense is going to be that great, which in turn can put the offense in real precarious situations. So, and we just got a notification Duke Johnson has been traded to the Texans. I also think, on the same topic of talking about Joe Mixon and the Cincinnati Bengals, one person on the flip side I do think can be a serious value, like late, like if we have 16 rounds, 14th round guy is Gio Bernard. especially this year. He has great catching ability with AJ going. I think Gio could be a great guy to pick up to move into a flex spot. Keep in mind a flex spot, okay? Because we do 2 RBs in the flex. So he's a flex guy. I mean, he's not my RB1, RB2, but I think he's great for the late rounds. But like I said, on the other side, the starting back, Joe Mixon, he's a guy I'd be concerned about.
Okay. I'm gonna actually concur with you on Joe Mixon.
Was that who you had in your head?
That was who I had in my head.
Wow, really?
But I'm going to say...
I only got one, and I got it.
But
ding, 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 ding. Winner, winner. Chicken dinner.
But I stick to the theme that I've gone with. As I said, the poor man's concept of Saquon Barkley. Yeah. This is the dead-on-arrival version of Saquon Barkley.
Yes.
He's going to be the focal point of the worst offense. It's a coach that is brand new since they got rid of him, who is not married to Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's career's over. He just hasn't been buried yet. So my point is, I think because of that, it's going to be ride it out, get a good draft pick our next quarterback. I think that lends to him having a very rough year. And he was a guy who I will say right now was on my running back squad last year and did very well for me. He was a regular starter. There was more to that offense last year, even though it wasn't great. And he was consistent. So if you're in a PPR, he's going to be good, I think, in the first half of the year in the sense that he will be consistent. He is not, in my mind, going to be a blow-up guy for them. And I think the wear and tear, and eventually that team's going to have to decide what they're going to do. And they drafted, who's the quarterback they drafted this year? Oh man, I'm going blank. But I think that you could be seeing the offense totally get changed midseason as they fall out of contention early and trying to figure out who they've got for next year. So
the one thing I will comment on that, and I'm glad you agree with me. The one thing I will comment on that I do have differing views though is the wear and tear. Okay. They may give him the ball a ton. He manages to keep himself out of really big hits and things like that. Like I feel like I find that he's just so athletic because he's not like a stout, super strong looking like a Saquon, where his thigh is the size of 2 thighs put together. Yep. But I think he's just so incredibly athletic that he manages to keep himself out of injury trouble. Now I say that. Knock on wood for him because he'll go out and for first preseason game they get him going and bust an ankle. Here's the other thing to keep in mind. That division, I think it's up for grabs with all the changes. I still think it's Pittsburgh's division. I do.
Still strong defense though there.
It's still up for grabs. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if I were going to give you one of the other ones I might have given you was Mark Ingram, who's over in that division in Baltimore.
We have officially mentioned every running back.
I know we have. Anyways, all right.
I agree.
Let's take a pause and
get into the receivers.
Your top 5 fantasy football wide receiver drafts. Who you got?
All right.
Top 5.
Top 5. I'm going to go a little bit away at some points from what I'm seeing projected. Again, we kind of talked about one of the concepts that I use, at least in doing this, is you got to understand, the factor of where the team is. Certainly the receiver position is heavily influenced on quarterback play, as most positions are, but more so than anywhere else.
The division you play in?
The division, right. The defenses you're going to be playing. Yep, absolutely. So I don't think this one will shock anybody. My number 1 is DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, just sheer talent out there. He's got a quarterback that's going to sling the ball. They're going to be in a division that's going to have to score some points.
Yep.
So he's got all those factors. He's got a quarterback that knows him beyond his pro years. So that's another big piece of the puzzle. There's definitely that symmetry there with them.
Yeah, I definitely think that as they continue to play together, that chemistry gets real strong. Yeah. That's scary.
And then, mind you, he's uber talented, too.
Well, you see what he's done with no-name quarterbacks. If he has the chemistry with the same quarterback year over year and the same system year over year, that could be scary.
Yep. Yeah. I will tell you my next one does even come with a slight bit of reservation, but I just think the talent's there, and certainly the quarterback is Michael Thomas.
Okay.
That's
not who I thought you were going to say.
I always get a little nervous of guys that get big contracts. For every Khalil Mack that goes out and performs to a big number, there's guys that don't.
There's about 3 or 4 to 5 guys that don't.
Yeah, so there's going to be a distribution of ball in that offense, and you know it. And part of it is also the division he plays in, and which gets me to my number 3 pick, which is it's going to be – I got some explanation to do on this, not because of talent, but just because of why, is Julio Jones. The Atlanta Falcons, as a football watcher, do not excite me. There's a lot of talk about them after the Super Bowl year and that there's this high-flying offense. They don't get it done on the field when it comes down to crunch time. But what they do, and I think this is going to be a little bit of a pressure year, is going to be put up points. I think the Falcons are going to have to sling the ball a lot in the division that they're in. And let's just be honest, like Julio Jones is not the guy he was 4 or 5 years ago. He's still elite. But one thing he does do is he gets the ball when it's thrown to him, and he catches in tough coverage.
The guy, he's like Nuke. There's times where you look and you're like, there's no way, and he makes it happen. To me, that's like, borderline unstoppable.
Yeah, he's a fantasy receiver.
Yeah, and here's what else. Just to couple that, they bought the Turd Cutter back, right?
Yep.
Dirk Cutter's now back as their OC. Okay, and though it took 2 years in his system the year before last, that second year, Ryan was the MVP, or what, 3 years ago?
Well, that was under...
That was the year they went...
That wasn't under Cutter, though.
Yes, it was.
No, that was under Kyle Shanahan when they went to the Super Bowl.
Was it?
Yeah,
Shanahan?
that was Shanahan. But they
I stand corrected.
But that being said, he did put up big offenses. That offense was not an anomaly. It was their best year. But Julio Jones was a top 3 receiver during Cutter's time. And I agree with you. The Shanahan offense was good, but it's.
Compared to what went on with Sarkisian
dumpster fire. Yeah, I mean they're going to need some running back health. The understanding though is they feel a little bit
weed
deeper
around here. I'm not smoking any weed, at least not right now, but I smell it.
Here's my next one that fell down the numbers last year.
Numero 4.
He was on my team, but more importantly, he plays against the enemy to me. So I had a little bit extra knowledge watching him. It was kind of a sour pill to watch him do so well. But I believe is a top 5, and that's Adam Thielen.
Whoa.
I think.
Wow.
Go look at his stats last year.
Are you not afraid that? I mean, I know he's a good receiver, but to go those first 7 games he went like over 100 yards. I mean, like, do you not like? That's what makes him appealing to me. That jumped off the page. I don't think he can repeat that production.
Yeah, but his production was the best in the NFL in a lot of categories.
Exactly. I think he's a good receiver. I don't think he's elite like Nuke or like Julio to the point where, yeah, they could repeat that. I just don't. But that's your call.
Well, here's where I'll say this, and this is where I come from. And watching that team, Stephon Diggs to me is a little bit like a Deshaun Jackson. He'll catch some underneath stuff and he'll turn some good runs, but most of the stuff is him flying down the field. Thielen is a great third down receiver. He can handle coverage and his hands are excellent. I just think, especially, I will even say this, in a PPR league, I think he's money because he's going to get his 6 to 7 catches. Even if he goes 80 yards, Cousins loves him in the red zone. And here's going to be the thing with Minnesota this year. They're playing in a defense or in a division where the defenses are going to be tough. Green Bay is going to be solid. The Bears are the Bears. Their own defense is tough. The Lions are what they are. But the reality is, I think he is the guy that is always there for the tough catches. He is this security blanket. And this is the year. I mean, you got to think about this. Minnesota's offense brought in DeFilippo, who was a quarterback's coach for the Eagles, but he was deemed as one of those guys that had the potential to be hired as a head coach. He got a lot of press. And then when he didn't get it, they brought him in and he flopped. And midseason, they started turning it around offensively. I mean, this is a team, Minnesota, that got smoked at home by Buffalo. I mean, that was brutal watching that, and that's with their defense. So, and they couldn't score. But here's the whole thing is, this is Cousins' money year. He's got 3 years. It's all guaranteed. But Minnesota's window is closing fast in a division that's tough. And
It is
the
tough.
and the
And,
NFC
I mean, you
is tough.
said it at the beginning, though, bro. Here's my question. You said one of the things you got to take into consideration is quarterbacks.
And I think they're going to have to throw the ball. And Cousins is going to have to prove it. And so what my point is, he's going to prove it with his arm. Now here's
Can
the whole.
he?
I don't know if he can win the game, but he's going to have to sling it.
You're riding a lot on a top 5 receiver with a quarterback that may not be able to make it. May or may not be able to make it.
Yeah, but
happen.
think about it. He wasn't exceptional last year, and look what Thielen did. My point is, he is going to be forced to throw, which is going to put the ball in the hands of the guy that he most trusts.
Okay.
I watched him play a lot, and I think they trust him. I think your PPR, he's a home run. I think your yardage-wise,
what
you're
if
still
the
strong.
teams like at the end of the year when that production tapered, okay, after he was on fire? What if teams start to game plan against that?
He didn't taper that much. I played him, so I didn't taper that much. I believe it. I think we're going to see it.
Okay.
That's probably my little bit of surprise.
So what's that, 4?
That's my 4.
All right, get on.
My 5th one, Odell Beckham. He comes with a lot of concerns with me, but
A lot of mouths to feed.
Right. But let's be honest. If the marriage is gonna work, arrogant quarterback and arrogant receiver are either going to plummet, which is why I would not. I mean, he's number 1 pick talented, like he is. His talent is there. I can't deny the fact they are gonna have to feed him the ball, and he can catch it. The question is going to be: is that marriage? It's either going to be passionate every day, every week, or it's going to turn into a dumpster fire, and that's why I've got him at 5. But you would be crazy not to take a talent like that if you're picking at the 5th wide receiver spot, because you're probably talking about, depending upon your league, round 2, round 3. And I don't know that you can really deny that with Odell Beckham.
I love it. That's definitely not like my list. A little bit like it, but not a lot, and it's definitely different, and you gave your reasons why.
So, back at you. So, who are your top 5 and why?
All right, well, the first one is Nuke. I mean, we went over that.
Okay.
DeAndre Hopkins is the best receiver in the league. My number 2 receiver is going to be Devontae Adams.
Okay.
I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be back to form. I don't think the line's great, but I think it's better. And the guy has scored double-digit touchdowns every year since he started in the NFL.
So the Matt LaFleur already rumblings about trouble in paradise doesn't scare you?
But
for the number 2 pick, the number 2 receiver?
Yeah, because,
Okay.
I mean, think about it. You've got a good quarterback, okay? You're in a
Definitely.
division, like you said, that you may have to put up some points, okay? Typically, it's a grind it out, but, Aaron Rodgers isn't, is totally capable of doing that if he's playing on point. And that is their number 1 asset outside of Aaron Rodgers. Who else? Who's their next guy? After it's not Aaron Jones, he'd come behind Devontae Adams. Okay?
As far as focal point of the offense?
Correct.
Sure, I would agree.
Okay,
Well, that's
so-
a passing. I mean, assuming all stays the same, which would be crazy not to. I don't think they would have brought the guy in. I would agree with you that he would be the centerpiece of that offense outside of Rodgers.
Look,
But it's going to be a throwing offense.
If it was like that last year and Rodgers was banged up, the line wasn't great, and they didn't have great receivers outside. They had Valdez-Scantling. Who'd they drafted?
Well, they got Geronimo Allison.
Geronimo Allison. Okay, they drafted Equanimous St. Brown from Notre Dame.
Yeah, he was poop last year.
That's right. But my point is this. I believe that Valdez, Scantling, and Allison will progress a little bit. They may not be great, but them getting better, I think, is going to make Adams even better.
Okay.
Because the teams may not be able to zero in on him completely the entire game if those two get better. And Valdez Scantling is like a 6'5" receiver that can go up and get the ball, and he's lightning fast. This year could be a good year for him. He's a late round sleeper.
Okay.
We'll talk about
All right.
sleepers later. So let's move into my number 3. My number 3 pretty much would have been with or without, but I even think so motivating-wise without, is Tyreek the Freak. It's Tyreek Hill. Okay?
Okay.
Guy had a great year last year. Mahomes, they're just going to get better. Him getting acquitted, so to speak, of this potential suspension. They're not going to retract that. It's done.
Yeah, he's danger, though. He's danger. But
Why
I agree.
would you think?
Why would I think he's danger? Because I think he clearly did something. I think his past history allowed him a suspension, but my point is, I guess he hasn't learned from it. So you do have the off-the-field risk. Uber talented.
I don't think you'll have to face that off the field risk this season. I think you faced it already. If something else comes down, it'll be for the next season. Okay?
Okay.
My number 4 receiver. Who do I have here? Oh, yes. My number 4 receiver is going to be T.Y. Hilton.
Okay.
Considered off the grid.
No, considered him. That definitely.
T.Y. got back to form and then some last year. Luck got back to form and then some last year. And you said it before. That's a division that they're going to have to put up points. And the defenses they're going to play, I don't think they're going to have – he's going to have a tough time with the type of game
And they had a rough run in the beginning of the year. They were lights out the last 12 games of the season.
That's right. That's right. So – 5 is kind of, I had 3 guys sitting at 5 that I was considering. It was Juju.
Okay.
It was Michael Thomas. And it was Julio. And I will land on my 5th receiver as Michael Thomas.
Okay.
Even though you thought I might have said Julio. And really, to the points you have, I mean, I think the guy's just getting better and better. He's still very young, got a lot of talent. They took Ingram away, so, the backfield is going to be Kamara. Breeze, probably one of his last goes, who knows? But he's still got the talent, and I just think that the guy can, they're going to sling the ball. They're in a division that, you said it, they're going to have to put up points. Could be, again, one of the toughest divisions in the NFL, and the guy has faced that the past couple of years and made something of himself. So I've got Nuke Adams, Tyreek the Freak, T.Y., and Michael Thomas.
Okay, well, why don't we come back with our I'd like to do something where our value picks in the middle rounds and then do our late round values and then also a little bit of brief chat about rookies.
Rookie, and couple rookies with sleepers, too. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. All right. So now let's go into and talk a little bit about value picks. And by value pick, we're talking about guys that could be, I'll use Adam Thielen as the example. He was probably, your 19th, 20th receiver last year, ranking wise, who ended up performing to a top 7 or 8 receiver. I think he probably was top 5. I have to go back and look at all the statistics. I certainly rode him for a while. So how about we do 2 of these? Who are 2 guys that you think are either going to produce above their production and potentially be a steal and a regular starter? You got a couple of guys you can think of for that?
Yeah. I think, I don't know if it's hard for me to say this is a value pick, but Cooper Kupp,
okay,
I think is a guy that you could pick up and, as going around, especially in our league, as a third receiver. In bigger leagues, probably, you'd have to pick him up at number 2, the way he's ranked. But I think that this year he had great production last year, got hurt, looking good. They've got a lot of weapons. It's a high-flying offense. I think they'll be back to form. McVay's not going to stop slinging, especially to him. That guy catches touchdowns. Yep. In standard leagues especially, I think he's an enormous value.
Okay.
In value in PPR because he's a slot receiver, so he gets a lot.
Got hurt at a concerning point in the season just because he was mid-season injured. And the question is, late season, even though they can come back from those injuries, the production usually is hard to follow. The question in my mind, and he could very well, I agree with all your sentiments on that, is just whether that injury recovery time was enough. He didn't start the camp on the PUP list, so that's a great sign. So that could be a really good pick.
Now, I mentioned Valdez-Scantling, and I do think he's a big value pick. I mean, you're talking somebody that may not go drafted in our league. But in terms of another one, I think maybe a little further up there that I kind of want to go with, I'm going to go to Jarvis. Okay. Jarvis is dropping down boards. It's obvious why. I said it before when you said Odell. There's a lot of mouths to feed in there. Yep. But he is production, that guy. Mm-hmm. So especially on the flip side of what I said about Cup, especially in a PPR league more than a standard, that guy gets a lot of catches.
Yep.
Okay. May not be a touchdown scorer all the time, but he gets a lot of catches in the large yards. So those are two guys that I might go for some value picks, a little higher. And keep in mind, our league is an 8-team league. It's small. It's not a 2-quarterback league. I know, ho hum. It's not. It should be more difficult. But that's the way we've played it for 20 years, and it's kind of like a historical thing. So we ride it out like that. These guys may not be value picks in a 10 to 12 person league because they're just going to be top notch receivers. Yep. But for our league, that's kind of the guys I'm going at.
Okay. My two guys are probably guys that, and kind of going along a little bit of that same approach. You went with number twos on a team, definite number twos, because you got Odell in Cleveland, and obviously you got Devontae Adams in Green Bay. I'm still going to stick with number ones, and where I say value is you're probably going to be looking at 4th through probably 7th round, depending upon how big your league is, but that could produce at a top 10 receiver level, meaning playing week in, week out. My first one is somebody that came on and was very good last year. Surprised he's not higher up on most of the lists that I'm looking at is Kenny Golladay.
I like it.
They're going to be, I mean, I just look at all the factors of it. Number one, that team's going to have to chuck it. Their life with Matthew Stafford, who has been a big fun and gun type quarterback. He's been a fantasy, not productive quarterback
the past couple years.
Yeah, certainly. So
and you're not worried about all the talk about Kerryon Johnson looking good, about Patricia feeding him a lot more, about the fact that Stafford's getting older and may not have the same juice.
Yeah. And here's why not. Number one, I went through the defenses in that league. He is in the conference, or excuse me, in the division. He's going to face some nasty defenses, which I see Detroit playing from behind quite a bit this year.
Very good point.
So when you play from behind, you're going to be chucking the ball. That already is their MO. The fact of the matter is Stafford can move the ball down the field in chunks. And I look at it and go, who on their team? I mean, Marvin Jones doesn't exactly get me giddy. They got rid of Golden Tate. So I just think they're going to be in that position. They went with a tight end, which hopefully will cover the middle first 20 yards of the field. And so you're going to be looking for a deep play threat. He looks like he's got the part of being able to catch the ball in traffic and catch the ball with contention. So I see kind of all those pieces fitting together, and not telling you Detroit's going to have a good year, but some of the best statistical guys are on teams that don't. My next guy is a comeback player for his team, is Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson, I look at that. He's a vertical guy. He actually, I thought, played pretty well for a Tampa team where he was the number 2 receiver. He's going to be more of a probably less catches, so maybe a little less attractive in a PPR league than he would be in a yards league, because he's going to stretch the field. He is getting a little bit older. He's sure-handed, but let's be honest, he still produced with extremely subpar quarterbacking last year, and now he's getting Carson Wentz, assuming he stays healthy. But I think he could be a guy that you're not gonna freak out if he might be your 4th receiver if you're dealing with a 3-receiver league, but you're able to play him with confidence in the weeks that you need him when matchups are bad or bye weeks are coming up. I don't know. I think he could have a bounce back big year just based off how he fits in that offense. So those are my two guys.
I like it. What was the next thing you wanted to hit on those
All
receivers?
right, so let's do a little bit of let's do deep sleepers. And this could include rookies, but your deep sleepers, a couple of deep sleepers that
all right, so let's separate though. We will talk about rookies specifically, but
okay,
this
so
is
non-rookie,
sleepers.
Non-rookie?
They could be rookies.
Okay.
Sleepers, they could be rookies. They don't have to be, but then we'll talk separately about rookies. So
okay,
give me like 2 or 3 sleepers at the wide receiver position.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why I would call him a sleeper is because the offense may put us to sleep. But I think there is a possibility that Jacksonville's offense with a healthy Fournette. I'm not a believer that Foles is going to light the world on fire. But let's be honest, our buddy Blake was completely inept. So having a guy that and he is a big arm quarterback, so he's going to push the ball down the field. So you could see a guy like D.D. Westbrook. Though I will tell you, one guy that I like on there as their receiver, he's a little thin, but I just there's something sneaky about him that I think could be very solid, and that would be DJ Chark. I just like him. I do. I think he's undervalued
Good receiver.
there. So, I mean, granted, I'm not telling you he's going to light the world on fire for you, but watch for matchups and see how that offense progresses. Could it be a dumpster fire? Yeah, it could be. But I do think, as much as I'm not in love with our buddy Foles as a long-term solution, it's miles beyond Blake Bortles, which isn't really that hard. So I think that's going to play into it. Could be interesting. I think this one is a little bit more of a long shot, and I think I got to do a little bit more work on it. But Farabi's physical tools is going out to Seattle and DK Metcalf. You got to lock it out there, so you still got that possession guy, and they are a run-heavy offense. But you can't deny that Russell Wilson can push the ball down the field when he has to, and a big physical receiver that can contest the ball could be just what the doctor ordered for them. So that one could be interesting, I think, for them. Those are probably two guys that I would put out there. And then you start getting into, I think, the number two receivers, who are some of the best new number two receivers. One guy I like, I'll put my last guy out there, though it's going to be somewhat based on matchups, and he scares me a little bit because of the type of offense they run, not so much because of his skill, but is Anthony Miller for the Bears. I think he's going to be their next heavy hitter at receiver. I don't know after this year whether they hold on to both Taylor Gabriel and Allen Robinson. Their contracts will be in positions where they can cut them, and they got to start thinking about paying Trubisky. So I don't know if this is the year, but he's that talented, and he is tough. Reminds me a little bit of Antonio Brown, a little less psycho. Hopefully he stays away from the cryotherapy. So I'd say those are three guys that I would say are ones to watch.
Okay. For me, my first one, I don't know if you want to go as so far as to call it a sleeper, but I'm going to call it anyways, is Chris Godwin.
Okay.
Probably be higher up on boards than expected, but expect that offense to throw the ball this year. There is no running game as far as we know. We'll see what happens with Ronald Jones if he takes the reins. But you got Mike Evans there. I think Jameis, this could be,
definitely make or break.
Yeah, this is a make or break. So he's going to have to sling it around. They're in a division that they're going to have to, put up points, and their defense is not great, so they're going to probably be playing catch up a lot. Yeah. So there's one for me. My next one is Curtis Samuel.
Okay.
Wide receiver from the Carolina Panthers. You've got Christian McCaffrey there, who eats up a lot of stuff. You've got DJ Moore, who they drafted last year. You've got a couple other, including their quarterback, a couple other mouths to feed. But last year, Samuel was able to put up 840 yards and 5 touchdowns. So his 160 yards with all that went on with Cam, really his shoulder bunk like the back third of the season.
Yep.
He was still able to come 160 yards shy of a 1,000-yard season. And for a receiver that's not even a starter sometimes, Yep. And McCaffrey eats up everything, passes, running, everything. So I think he's a good sleeper, especially somebody you could pick late. My last one is going to be Christian Kirk. Okay. Want to get a little fun with this. The guy can fly. Second year in an offense. He knows.
Well, it's a new offense, though.
Yes, but second year in the NFL, I guess I should say. But
Yep.
This is an offense, though, that he's used to. It's an offense he played out of Texas A&M. Right across the way was friggin' Jake Jingle and Ball's doppelganger there in Cliff Kingsbury. And he was over at Texas Tech. From my understanding, the two had a relationship. this kid can fly, and Murray can throw the ball. So, this one's like, boom or bust. Like, if that offense can get going, you do still have Larry Fitzgerald, and it looks like there's a little bit of cohesion between him and Kyler Murray. I don't think that people are going to zero in as Kirk, even though he may end up being the number one, as the number one, to the point where even if they know he's the number one, that they're going to need to double team the guy, at least out the gate. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I also think that they're going to be having to play from behind a lot too, just like the other teams with the sleepers I mentioned. So those are my three.
And I think if they don't perform, I think that's a good point. But if they don't perform in Arizona, at the very least, their offense has to be fun, or you're going to see the demise of this situation real quickly.
I mean, the whole point of them scrapping they moved up to get the chosen Rosen last year, and then the next year got a new coach and scrap it and go right with the first pick and get a new quarterback. You're right. There's a reason, and they're looking to fly high.
Yep.
That is what they are looking to do. They are looking to air that sucker out. 4 wide, just about every snap on offense you're probably going to see. At least 3, if not 4 wide.
Yep. I think that's a good point.
So those are my 3. Let's move on, move right off of that into rookies, and talk about rookie wide receivers. And I don't want to go 5 deep, but let's stay on like 3, and let's go 3 deep to who you think is going to be worthwhile in terms of the rookie wide receivers coming out.
I mean, as you know, I already mentioned DK as a potential sleeper, so I would definitely put him on the top of the board. And the idea being, he to me is a guy that's going to see opportunity. I mean, that's the first thing with a receiver is our receiver is going to see an opportunity in the NFL coming out. It's in a way, for you to be able to do that, I mean, you got to either have a physical presence that your team doesn't currently have, or you have to have be an incredible route runner. So my next 2, and again, this goes more with position, is Marquise Brown out of Baltimore. I think that's a team that's got to build itself again. And again, you're going back to a quarterback. They're trying to change their focus, a quarterback that's going to be on the move a lot. I just think he's going to get opportunity. I won't say he's the most talented, but I think is going to get the biggest opportunity of the remaining receivers. And I will say this is probably more for deeper leagues. And there's probably going to be guys that are going to perform better. But I think for a guy that's going to have a place in an offense week in, week out, I like your boy from Clemson. I like Hunter Renfrow. I think he's going to be...
they've been matching him up against, like, the top corner for the Raiders in camp, and he's performing. You said it. You wanted to talk about route running? This kid has he's a little thing. Love Hunter, but he is the guy that bags your groceries at Kroger.
With a hot wife.
Yes. And he's balding, and he's only like 23.
Yep.
But let me tell you something. That guy's hands are awesome, and he runs routes.
And he's fearless.
There's no tomorrow. Yeah,
fearless.
And he knows how to take a hit too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if he knows the hit's coming, he knows how to position his body so he doesn't get knocked the frig out.
And the Raiders already know who their deep threat is, and they're going to need that. They are still they're going to be run like a power team with Gruden. So they are going to want the underneath stuff. And I just think he has that chance to be, I'd put him in the line of like a Cole Beasley when he wasn't the premier receiver on Dallas. I think there was one year where he was like their best receiver, which was pretty scary. But he'll be like that, which is touches. Probably deeper PPR is probably where his most value's at. And I think the best is yet to come with him. He's the kind of guy you could see. I'm probably putting a little bit too much pressure on him, but I could see him evolving like an Edelman when Welker was still on the team. You know what I mean? Like evolving where he wasn't that guy, but he has displayed toughness. He, like you said, he runs good routes and he catches the ball. And I just think he fits a niche in that offense that is going to give him some opportunities beyond the average rookie.
Okay, I like it. All right, I'll give you 3, but I will preface it by saying I don't have them in any specific order. Okay, it's not like I think this is the no. These are just 3 rookie wide receivers that I think could be impactful. The first one is, and though I'm not a Georgia fan, but I am an Atlanta, my man, Mecole Hardman from the Georgia Bulldogs. He's with the Chiefs. Enough said.
Okay.
He plays for the Chiefs. Okay? They're going to sling the ball around and score a lot of points. Mahomes throws the ball. He's a good receiver. Really what's going to be the difference is if he gets time in there, if he gets, some snaps. I think he'll get some snaps because you got Tyreek and you got Kelsey in there, and they'll run, who's the other guy they have on the other side, the other Georgia, Conley? Is he still there, Chris Conley?
Yep.
So... But the fact of the matter is they could stand having another receiver really step up, and then they are, that offense can be unstoppable.
Sure.
He's really good. I think that just for the mere fact of the production and the opportunity in that offense, I think he's a guy to look out for as a rookie.
Okay.
My next guy, honestly, he was if I were, of all the receivers in this class, this was my number one. That's A.J. Brown.
Okay.
Everybody talked about, it's so funny how the combine just twists stories completely in a different direction. And I appreciate what the combine has to offer to evaluate kids. Mm-hmm. But the evaluation should weigh 70 to 80% on their college production, okay, in my mind, okay? For the mere fact that his teammate came in and ran one of the fastest 40 times, he went in front of him, but in terms of drafting. A.J. Brown was the number 1 receiver on Ole Miss's team.
Yep.
He was the number 1. Who's his teammate? Who is the other guy? Why am I blanking? Who's
on Ole Miss
on Ole Miss.
Or on his pro
on
team?
Ole Miss. DK Metcalf. You named him. DK.
Blank.
And Metcalf, I agree with you. He's great. Obviously, he's got blazing speed, but he is a straight line runner. He's not a great route runner. He runs great in a straight line. Okay, and that was why, if you look at the statistics for Ole Miss's wide receivers the past couple years, A.J. Brown absolutely destroyed what DK Metcalf did.
Yep.
In terms of yardage, in terms of receptions, in terms of touchdowns. He reminds me of your boy from Florida State, Anquan Bolden. That's who he reminds me of. Mm-hmm. He is, I think in an offense like Tennessee, that's built for that, okay? I don't know what's going to happen with Mariota. Okay, I think this is it for him. Okay, unless something miraculously happens. But I also don't see A.J. Brown being like the downfield threat. I think he's going to service the slot role. And he, like Hunter Renfrow, except a lot bigger and thicker, is not afraid to take a hit, runs great routes, and has great hands. So he's my second one. The last one is a rookie receiver I would say keep an eye out for. And that is Paris Campbell.
Yep. From
Ohio State. And similar to Hardman, it's pretty simple. He's playing on the Colts.
Yep.
You got T.Y. there. Okay, you got a couple other ancillary pieces. Hopefully my man Deion Kane will come back, my man from Clemson that they drafted last year that tore his ACL, make part of the team. He looked good in camp last year. But Campbell's a really good receiver, and Andrew Luck's a really good quarterback. I think that's somebody that if you're looking at a rookie receiver, especially if you're looking at rookie receivers in general, you got to go with receivers that have a quarterback slinging them the ball that you can count on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think with the late sleepers and with the rookies, here's a simple fact, and this is why it's a little bit of a crapshoot, is in order for them to be successful, they are going to have to beat somebody out for a role.
Right.
So that is your risk and that's why you watch training camp and you watch as that moves forward to determine, is that starting to happen? And I think that's true of all of the rookies, and that's why there is boom or bust. But if you really look back at last year's rookie wide receivers, you're probably talking about guys that are draftable. When the season's all said and done, that what you would consider draftable, you're probably talking about maybe 2-3 guys max. So, take that with a grain of salt and pay attention to what's going on if you're considering any of these guys.
Yep. All right. Well, we should talk a little quarterback too, but let us get ourselves together so we have some solid thoughts. We're going to talk about fantasy football quarterbacks to round out the fantasy football discussion. We've touched on running backs. We've touched on wide receivers. So today we want to talk a little bit about quarterbacks. Probably leave a little discussion in the future for tight ends, and that'll be it, if that. But quarterbacks are something I do want to touch on. So we're going to go with the same as we have with the other two position groups and start by discussing overall quarterback rankings and your top 5 quarterbacks as you see them in terms of who you would pick.
Okay, that sounds good.
Who you got?
Let me say this with quarterbacks. I think in the last 2 years, we're under a pretty significant, I'm going to use a big word, I probably not even going to use it correctly, but paradigm shift as to fantasy quarterbacks. The days of the clean pocket passer throwing for 35 touchdowns, 8 or less interceptions, and putting up 350 yards in the air is not as common as it used to be, but also more importantly, there is a convention to it now with running, just given the way that offenses have adapted and the RPO and college concepts that these teams are bringing in. So I think it's drastically shifted. I mean, we were not but 3-4 years ago where it was the traditional Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees sitting back there and slinging it were the ones that were leading the front, and that has really, really changed in my mind. And so I guess I go through my 5, and I have to be honest with you, after the first 2, it gets a little cloudy, and it kind of is that interim in between, the pocket passer of the past versus the new wave quarterback. So I will say my 2 clear front runners right now, somewhat, I would say they're not interchangeable in this sense, because I do have an injury concern that I think everybody would have. But I think it's Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, I think, are those guys lead the quarterbacking group. I expect Patrick Mahomes to take a step back from last year, but let's talk about what that really means, which is taking a step back from a 50 touchdown season it's not going to be a bad step in that sense.
It could be just fine, but there is the question of sophomore slump.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I'll face something.
And I'm in agreement with you on the top 2. I think that, and I hate him, but I love him because he's a great coach. But I hate him because he was in the Eagles coach forever and ever. I don't hate him as much anymore. But Andy Reid's such a great coach that I think he can almost help Mahomes overcome some of that sophomore slump, quote unquote.
And he's got the weapons. And I think that's 2 things that set these quarterbacks aside, is not only their skill level, but the weapons around them are strong. I think they both have, I would say, less strength in the running game. But that's the other part is, and particularly Deshaun Watson adds his own element to the running game.
Right.
So that really, in some ways, I think offsets it. Deshaun can concern me with injuries because he's so incredibly athletic. He extends plays, and I always kind of looked at Michael Vick, but Deshaun Watson can throw the ball much better than Michael Vick could. But as fast as Michael Vick was, and he was faster than everybody else in the league at the time when he was at the top of his game, he still took a tremendous amount of shots. So the question's going to be, do they protect him? So again, every quarterback has a risk. You're standing back there, you got 10 guys that are falling at your feet between the offensive and defensive lines on any given play. So, you kind of got to weather that storm. But from a sheer, if they stay healthy, I think between their legs. Mahomes is more of a thrower, but he definitely can run. Deshaun has the potential to put up big yardage there. So those are my top two, and this is kind of where I struggled and trying to figure out where I would go from there. You could add a guy like Carson Wentz to that style of play, but Carson Wentz, talk about an injury risk, so he would be dangerous. But on a team that's pretty loaded, I think a lot of people would have put Andrew Luck up there. But as we all know right now, there's some major injury concerns with that. I was kind of just looking it up, and I'm reading The Kiss of Death, and there was a few interviews done, and Irsay, the owner, said he's dealing with a, quote, small bone issue. It has nothing to do with the Achilles tendon. Ballard, the GM, said they're expecting him back. Frank Reich wants to make a call on week 1, so they're already pushing him out of training camp. And it's just nobody seems, they're talking, oh, it's not really a high ankle sprain, it's more in the calf area. I guess it's all the uncertainty for a guy that has had injury-prone issues for so long. Granted, those were in his shoulder. I just think that's all coach GM speak for we got a problem on our hands, and unfortunately, we don't know what it is.
Well, I mean, with Luck, unfortunately, we've heard this before. I mean, it was the same, they addressed it the same way, the owner and the GM, with the shoulder issues. And quite frankly, it was 2 seasons he was gone. And for 2 seasons, and you're talking fantasy football going in, it was the same feeling with Andrew Luck.
Yep.
You know, so, I mean, I could understand 2 seasons ago because he was coming right off it. But last year, I mean, not last year, the year before last, wow, it was almost surprising that he was gone the whole year.
Yep.
I didn't expect that. So I'm with you on your reservations with the coach speak, because I'm starting to read between the lines, and with the history we've seen with that program, I mean, you know, he's their guy for the long haul. And obviously they're not afraid, if the slightest thing is off, to have him not go in and make it worse. So, and that's a good thing for the team, but if you're a fantasy football player, it leaves a lot of question marks.
Yeah, high risk. I think after those first 2, I think you see a gap in the drafting of the rounds. I guess I'll kind of, to not belabor this point, but I'll kind of hit my next few guys. And these, I'll admit, they all come with question marks to me, which is a little frightening on the top 5. I think this is where you get into real boom or bust scenarios. I picked from my wide receivers, you may remember, Julio Jones to have a pretty big year, and I put him as my number 3 receiver. I think the Falcons are going to push offensively hard this year. I see Matt Ryan, even though I'm not a believer, and I know there's all this talk about Matt Ryan. Is he truly a superstar quarterback? And it's back and forth. What I will say is, when he's on, he's a fantasy superstar.
He's a great quarterback when he's on.
Yeah,
and when they have that, if the offense goes like we can have seen it go a couple of years back, I mean, he's like, they can put massive numbers up.
Right. And I think that's more the boomer bust. So these next 3 guys, I don't know if I'm really going to put them in order, but I'm going to put them as my 3. I have, again, serious reservations on this, but boomer bust again is Baker Mayfield. I believe the offense is primed, but the danger with him is, if anybody could really see a sophomore slump, it could be him. He has certain tendencies, and the worst thing you can do in the NFL is show your tendencies. And if you don't know what your tendencies are, and your coach doesn't know what your tendencies are, and they don't coach you how to overcome them, that second year in an offense can be pretty rough. But you can't discount the fact that they loaded him up with weapons. He's definitely got that cockiness and that arrogance to push the ball downfield. So I think they're going to have to do that. So I would put him in there as a candidate. But again, I think that's why I said in my mind, there's this big gap between the top 2 and where I'd risk drafting on these other guys.
It's his sophomore year too, man.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Look, what if he hits it?
Yep.
I mean, you know, and you don't know how he'll take it if he hits it, because he's an arrogant little guy, and sometimes that helps him, but it can also, I think, if he starts to struggle in a sophomore slump, become a problem.
Yep.
Especially with all the personalities on that team.
Yep, I agree. So my last one, and I'm going to go traditionalist on this, kind of swinging back to the old way, I'm going to go with Drew Brees. I counted that guy out in 2005. And I I've suffered every year since then with him. They are who they are. They still have their coach. Their relationship is strong, which is a reason why I won't put Aaron Rodgers in the top 5. I believe Aaron Rodgers is pissed off and wants to have a good season, but I am not convinced he's in sync with his coach. And truthfully, I just don't know that they have the weapons. And I still think Breeze has all of that going for him. So it's going to be a good thing for them. So again, my top 2, Mahomes and then Deshaun, and then the next 3, I got Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan, and Drew Brees. And then I think the next probably 4 to 5 are pretty close to that top 3, the bottom 3 of the 5 that I selected. But those are going to be the ones I'm going to go with.
Okay, I like it. I'm totally concur with you on Mahomes and Watson. I would go Mahomes first, Deshaun Watson second, if you're going to, rather than say they're interchangeable. Number 3 for me is one of the guys you mentioned just there at the end. That's Aaron Rodgers. I banged up last year. I don't know if he's in sync with the offense or the offensive coordinator, but I don't think it's not going to get worse. Okay, I think they hit rock bottom. I don't think their line's tremendously better, but they made some improvements. The guy still can sling the ball. So, my concern is the weapons that he has. If Aaron Jones turns it on this year and stays out of trouble and can play all year, that's going to be tremendous for Aaron Rodgers.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, and this is where some of my reserve is, do you think Aaron Rodgers is okay with running the ball a lot more?
Yeah, I mean, if they can,
Did I just say Aaron Jones? I mean Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if I said Rodgers or Jones.
Which ones did you? Who do you mean?
Aaron Rodgers. Do you think Aaron Rodgers, given his propensity to pass and his arrogance?
I think that he landed on his back so many times last year that that to help that, especially if the line isn't great, you've got to make them respect the run. Okay. It'll give him way more time back there, open up things way more in the passing game, putting people, in the box more if the run game is strong.
Right.
And that'll allow him to throw the ball. My 4 guy is one you did not mention, and that's Russell Wilson. Okay. And I hear you on Baker and these folks, and it's yet to be seen. But I mean, Russell Wilson again has done it. He does it with his legs. He does it with his arm every year. In terms of, I look at Russell Wilson as he's above average and he's consistent.
Yep.
For the most part, throughout the year, he's consistent. He may not put up the monster numbers of a Mahomes, but he's going to put up usually above average.
Yep.
Very good fantasy football numbers for a week, and it's consistent usually. And still, at the end of the day, they added a few pieces. We know they run the ball a lot, but some of that is going to come from him. And at the end of the day, he's the guy there. He is the focal point. The Giants, their focal point's Barkley. I mean, you talk about the Falcons and Matt Ryan's great. I still think the focal point there is Julio Jones. That's their guy.
Sure.
And with the Seahawks, it's still Russell Wilson. The great thing is it's been like that for a while, so it's not anything the guy's not used to. So he's my number 4. My number 5, and look, I'm going, aside from the first 2, I'm traditionalist. This ADP on some of the stud quarterbacks, like your Tom Brady, is listed, I'm looking at it as the 21st quarterback.
Yep.
Look, man, okay, Kirk Cousins is 19. Yeah, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, it's not going to work out like that. I don't care who he does or does not have. I don't care if Josh Gordon's there or not. It's Tom freaking Brady, okay? But
even though you saw the regression,
I did.
You didn't see a regression in his ability to win.
My number 5. My number 5 is somebody you mentioned.
Okay.
That's Drew Brees.
Okay.
They've added, I think, a weapon that he's needed that they've tried to find for a while in tight end Jared Cook. Okay, I think they've tried to find a weapon bringing since Jimmy Graham at the tight end position. They just really haven't gotten it done. Okay, I think Jared Cook is good at filling that. Kamara's great. Ingram's gone. Yeah, that's fine. They'll find a second back to take some load off of Kamara, but he's going to receive the ball a lot too.
Yep.
More than most running backs. And, there's weapon. The guy slings the ball.
Yep.
Again, it's about, I look at the overall production. You'll probably see Drew Brees does not get hurt to the point that he misses games.
No.
So
he's smart. He's one of the. He's
smart.
probably one of the smartest
hits.
quarterbacks ever.
So that's my 5. I go Mahomes like you. I go Watson like you. And where we differentiate, then I go Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees. Okay. So that's kind of where we rank the quarterbacks. I guess now my question that I want to play off of from there is, what about sleeper quarterbacks?
Okay.
So the quarterback, like, even if you're not a 2-quarterback league, because we're not, even though we have a small league, we should be. Who's a guy that, because we have an 8-team league with our guys, everybody's loaded, and not everybody takes the second quarterback. But say you want to take a second quarterback. Who's a sleeper guy that you might roster to put on your bench to slot in that that you're excited about, that you know who I'm going to say.
Yep.
And I got a couple more, but
Yep.
who are you excited to see?
Well, let me preface it real quick just with a short comment. What's interesting to me is I'm looking at, an NFL ranking, which it doesn't really matter, but what's really interesting to me, and you kind of just touched on it, is I can go down, and this is what's different about the league in my mind, regardless of whether you got an 8-team, 10-team, 12-team, you're playing 2 quarterbacks, is after you get rid of those first 2 guys, in my opinion, there is, for the first time in a long time, there's 20-plus quarterbacks that you can play matchups with.
Correct.
And have strong. I mean, we've got guys like Stafford at 26. I mean, Stafford's not what he used to be, but the guy can throw for 400 yards in a game if you get the right matchup with
Jameis.
them. Yeah.
Jameis,
Yep.
this could be his
Yep.
last stand this year.
Yep.
I mean, look, if Fitzmagic did all that stuff, I still believe there's a lot. They have where they're strong is their receiving weapons.
And you got Phillip
And they're
Rivers
gonna
at
be down.
17.
They're going to be down, so
Yep.
they're going to have to throw the ball. That's the other thing
Yep.
to keep in mind.
I mean, you got Darno at 23, Derek Carr at 24.
Darno! I didn't know he was from New Orleans.
I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo could have a bounce back
Jimmy
year.
Grapes.
But to answer your question is,
Give me 2.
I'm going to give you 2. Okay, well, I can definitely give you 1. And a little bit of a homer here, but it's Mitch Trubisky. 1, you got an Andy Reid style offense, which is conducive to pushing the ball down the field and spreading the ball around. The Bears certainly have the weapons all the way around. Now, Mitch Trubisky is very polarizing, but I got to be honest with you, I don't know if I've ever been a Chicago fan where I haven't seen the quarterback be the most polarizing position in all of their professional sports in Chicago. So, I believe he's in year 2 of an offense, which is not his sophomore year, but a year 2 of an offense where he is getting up to the line. He's going to be able to read defenses better, and he is sneaky good with his running. I mean, his running is very strong. He stays healthy. He's tough. He has some throwing hitches and issues that cause him to sail the ball, so he's got to cut down on his interceptions. I definitely see him for 4,000 yards plus this year in that offense and 30 touchdowns plus. So, and he consistently does it. Like, even when he throws for 220, he can run for 40 to 80 yards in games. So I think you're going to get some production out of him that is going to warrant that, getting back into that idea of you may be doing more matchup with the quarterbacks from 3 on down. But I mean, there are some names here that can put up some big numbers. So he's my first guy that could have
to give me another
a boom. No? Or why don't you give me one? We'll go back and forth.
All right, that's fine. Well, you know who mine is.
Yep.
Josh Allen. I had him on my roster at the end of the year, and I said it before we even got on this. The guy, he can sling the ball. They're going to be a team that I do think their defense is going to be really good. I got to be honest. So, and they're in a division that, besides the Patriots, you question a lot of stuff. I don't know if they'll be down in a lot of games. History says they will. All right. But I really don't. I think their defense is going to keep a lot of them closer. But the fact they don't McCoy, we don't know. I mean, you said they may be releasing him anyways. They don't really, until they find somebody, and that guy runs the ball over the yard. And there were games last year that he put up as many numbers as Patrick Mahomes did in the same week. And it was simply because he was going over 100, passing over 100 running.
Yep.
You know, I mean, the guy was everything for that team, and I don't see that being much different. So there's, you know, I'm, you know, when I interjected, you know, give me your sleeper, who you're excited about. I'm excited about Josh Allen.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody was screaming from the top of their lungs. If you remember last season, Carson Wentz was a top quarterback, you know, prospect for fantasy football.
Yep.
Why don't they? I mean, Allen is down here. I'm looking on this board at, where is he? He's at like 20. I don't know why that is, because and Carson Wentz is at 8. Dude, if it came down to Wentz or Allen, like that was, you know, I had to choose one, I would take Allen.
Yep.
Like, I think they're very similar in their styles. They played, you know, out in that Mountain West type area environment. The way their game was both, you know, groomed in college is very similar.
Yep.
Very similar. Here, Carson Wentz gets all the pump.
Yep.
I mean, I know they made it to the Super Bowl that year, but let's be honest. Like, the guy got hurt, and Nick Foles ended up taking him the ride. We didn't get to see him take him through the postseason. That's a different beast.
Yep.
And so I'm excited about Josh Allen.
Okay.
So you can give me another one if you want.
All right, let's just do one more. And this has tremendous boom or bust mentality, but I'm going to play on the boom side, and with the, you know, idea it may not work out, but I'm going to go with Jimmy Garoppolo, and I'm going to go for 2 reasons. One, I think he can throw the ball. I don't know that he's elite. I'm just looking for Kyle Shanahan to take that next step as the offensive coordinator and do a little something like what he did out in Atlanta. So
Out in Atlanta?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm in Atlanta, but it's out in Atlanta when you live in San Francisco. So I'm kind of digging a little deeper down the list because, like I said, I think really from like 3 to 24, 25, you're talking about guys that you can play matchups with, which is exciting because I think it's going to make a more active fantasy season. You've got the traditionalists, some of them regressing, and but at the same time, not regressing to the point where they scare you. And then you've got young guys, like you mentioned, Jameis Winston, who are in prove-it years. You know, I'm not a believer in Marcus Mariota, but I mean, he's in a prove-it year. Mm-hmm. So you've got some of those things. And I mean, I could tell you, I could even add Sam Darnold as a similar one, like, because I like Gase as an offensive coordinator. I don't like him as a head coach. But if he's involved in that offensive game plan, I mean, people forget he got the best year out of Jay Cutler any coach did. And it wasn't, I mean, Cutler was significantly better than any of his stats the year that he coached him. And it's because he knows how to protect his quarterbacks from their weaknesses. And with a young guy, that's great. So, I mean, again, like I think I'll still stick with Jimmy Garoppolo, but just because of it's more the Shanahan mentality, but, you know, it could happen. But again, I think there's matchup galore you can play on this list of quarterbacks, and it's great. It's great.
Okay. My second is really gonna follow suit with Josh Allen. The reason I love Josh Allen is the running ability, adding to your points. Mm-hmm. And so my other guy is Lamar Jackson. You knew it was coming.
I did. Well, and I'm with you.
They've got they bought it. You know, one of the things in the offseason that was really made me raise an eyebrow, and a lot of it is because I'm a Clemson fan.
Yep.
And I know our conference very well. Mm-hmm. They brought Paul Johnson, the head coach of the Georgia Tech, on as like an offensive consultant. Mm-hmm. Okay. Georgia Tech, all they did was run the ball.
Yeah, running concepts and more importantly, blocking concepts.
Right. So I see that, and I'm just like, whoa. I've seen Lamar Jackson under a pro-style offense in college, and the guy, I saw him live, and it's not Michael Vick. It is different. It is really different. It's almost a combination of like Vick and Deshaun.
Sure.
Because, you know, and maybe that's because of his size, because when he gets going, he's like a gazelle. You know, those legs, it's not necessarily quick.
Right.
He happens to have that quickness when he's in tight, but then once he breaks free, it's not like quick little feet. It is like a gazelle just striding downfield. And I know he can throw the ball. His accuracy might not be great, but he's got an arm. So that's a guy I'm excited to see. And again, for the mere fact you're getting, especially because we're a PPR league, I mean, you're getting it all over the board.
Yep.
You know, he's able to get those running points. So in fantasy, that's a guy I'm excited about. So there's a couple sleepers. One more thing I want to touch on from quarterbacks to discuss. Rookies. Let's throw out a rookie or two and let's chat about it. What do we think? I mean, we know the top rookie, so I'll let you go first.
All right, I'm going to give opinion on them as opposed to picking a rookie I think will tear it up, because I think I think the rookie would.
I want what you think of the guy rather than are you going to pick him late?
Yeah, I would say this: the one that I think is going to have a rough year is, and he's high on boards, is Kyler Murray. I'm not buying. I'm selling on
Why?
that. One, I mean, in short term, I didn't like any of the stuff I saw in the preseason, but here's the realistic part: is you've got a seriously aging receiver in Larry Fitzgerald. Never really been a burner. He'll come down with the ball. And I think that, so that limits his ability in that. I am not a believer in David Johnson, which you'll remember from my running back. I kind of did a little bit more research on it, and it looked more bleak. And I think
he was a wide receiver before he was a running back in college. So the guy can catch the ball, and you saw it in that 1 year. So that might be okay.
He can. I guess my point, though, is if you can't push the ball downfield, and I think they're going to struggle to push the ball downfield, you bring defenses up. And here's the big difference. When I watched him at Oklahoma, when he ran, he was faster than everybody else. That's not the NFL.
Right.
It's not the NFL. And I will tell you the punishment he can take. And I will know this because I've watched, and again, go back to a Bears fan, I've watched Check Down Charlie. That gets people killed, and you start falling behind. And when you start falling behind, what do? You start changing your offense and having to push the ball downfield, which means you leave your quarterback in the pocket. I don't think he is so supremely athletic. Like, to me, Deshaun Watson is still, like, think about his health history in the NFL has been a little spotty, and he is a significant runner with, I think, to me, a much better opportunity to pass, and came into a team with much better weapons. And even still, he had injury issues. I think the cupboard is bare. I mean, let's just look at their coaching history. I mean, I get this idea of getting the young offensive mind, but I think teams are starting to reach. And I think Cliff Kingsbury is potentially one of those coaches that's a reach. I think LaFleur in Green Bay could be a reach. You find it. Guys that innovate are successful, but then when you try to start duplicating that to excess, you start scraping parts of the barrel you don't really want to pull from. And I don't see it. It's a bad team. When you're picking in the top 3 2 years in a row, especially when you basically threw away your draft pick the year before. I mean, you gave them away for peanuts. I don't see where they've moved ahead. They're going to have to play, some decent defenses. I think there's games where he could have big games, but that's danger to me.
Okay. And I'll give you mine in a second, and it won't be Daniel Jones.
It should be. I don't know who else you're going. I know you're going to go. Okay.
Okay. It's not Daniel Jones. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm speaking on here is somebody to watch out for, not necessarily going to be good or this, that, and the other, but somebody that's going to get playing time to watch out for. And touching on Kyler Murray, I think, the jury's not out yet, but I am kind of leaning the way you lean, but I'm leaning the way you lean for another reason. Who else is in their division? What is it? That's we're talking.
We're talking
Cardinals,
Arizona,
NFC West. So you got
talking
Seattle, you got
LA Rams,
you got the Niners.
Yep.
And not that all 3 of them are formidable foes, offensive or defensively. Well, maybe the Rams. My concern with the Cardinals is their defense.
Yep.
I don't think their defense is going to be very good.
I don't think their team is good.
For a rookie quarterback to be put in rough positions time and time and time and time again, going to be rough.
Yep.
It's going to be rough. In an air raid offense and the way they move, you're talking 3 and out, if they don't get it done, 3 and out, 3 and out. That bad defense is going to continue to be on the field. The good thing is they are probably going to be behind, and he's going to have to let it rip. So, I don't know. My guy to look out for, who do you think it is?
Well, I think it should be Daniel Jones, but
I don't want to talk about Daniel Jones because we don't know yet. I think it looks great. Look, we talked about you. Well, go back to our first podcast, ladies and gentlemen, or one of the first one, and I was asked as the Giants fan, who do you want to pick if it's a quarterback? Who did I say? Daniel Jones. I said Daniel Jones. I did say we should drop back and collect picks, but of all the quarterbacks I wanted, it was Daniel Jones. There were a lot of reasons behind it that I'm not going to get into. The guy I think you should keep an eye out for this year is Ryan Finley.
Yep, I was going to say that because that's really realistically, there's only about 4 quarterbacks that have the potential to start this year.
I've seen him. He started, I think it was all 4, if not 5 years at NC State. Good quarterback. Accurate, can throw the ball. Not great, but he's good. He's a solid guy. He's smart enough. He was in an offense that has 2 of its receivers in the NFL right now. The guy can play. And he's on Cincinnati. And, Big Red is done. I think it's only a matter of, it could happen game 1.
Could.
Okay.
It could happen out of camp.
That's why I think, you need to keep an eye out for Finley. I'm looking at the team. And yeah, Daniel Jones may come in for Eli, and Eli's at the end. Eli's still better than Andy Dalton. I'd still take Eli over Andy Dalton if you had to give me the choice. But it's the mere fact of the team. I think he's going to get in. They picked him for a reason, and I think he's going to get in there sooner rather than later. Whether he does okay or not is yet to be seen, but that's who I'd look out for.
And I would just say this. I think if we're just being realistic, there are 4 potential quarterbacks that can start. And you've got Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Ryan Finley, based off the reports we're getting, and Kyler Murray. I don't know that nobody's going to want to go anywhere else with a rookie quarterback.
I mean, unless this thing with Cam's shoulder is still not resolved, then I think you'll start to see Stidham.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Is
he in year 2 though? Is he? No,
this is his first year. If you don't, and they say he's looking great. Look, the bottom line is if you don't see Cam's shoulder
working,
working,
Stidham or are you talking about Will Greer? I thought Will Greer was on that.
Sorry,
team.
Will Greer. Stidham's with the Patriots. They're one next to each other on the list. I'm looking at. It's Will Greer.
Yeah, that is not an ideal situation. No. That's not what you're walking out. I don't think, just being truthful, I don't think any of the 4 are ready to play right now. Meaning all else being equal, you don't want them to play. Daniel Jones has shown the most. I got to take, again, you and I, you being a Giants fan, me being a Bears fan, we had interest to watch this. Daniel Jones looked good against the Bears, and obviously he looked very good in week 1. Now the Bears, probably about 6 guys played. They're going to make the 53-man roster. See, it's always hard. You got to take some of that with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean what he did wasn't excellent. Doesn't mean his throws weren't good. It's just it's hard to tell.
Against
it's just hard. It's hard to tell. Like, he didn't get much of a pass rush. But does that mean that the Giants can't block for him just because it wasn't Khalil Mack? It is Khalil Mack, so that is a big different beast. But it doesn't mean he can't be blocked. So you got to take some of that with a grain of salt. What I like the most is I like Daniel Jones' demeanor, and I like his mental makeup the most, and therefore
one of the reasons I said that's the guy. I mean, you're talking about a guy. He's a smart kid. He went to Duke. Okay, I told you at the end of the season when Duke came to Clemson last year. After watching that game, that's what sold me. That guy can run when it's not. He can throw the ball. He's really tall, so he can see over the line. A la my Trevor Lawrence. One of the greatest things about Trevor is that he is that big.
Yep.
I mean, I get it. Small quarterbacks can have success. It's much easier to see over those titans on the line if you're a tall guy. It makes life a lot easier.
Yep. You don't want to handicap in the NFL, especially the quarterback position.
Went to Duke. He's a smart kid. He was under Cutcliffe, man. It's a level-headed guy. I mean, I love Dabo. One of the reasons is because he is just a ball of fun and energy. Cutcliffe is not that smart guy, but that guy is not like jumping around, like
Yep.
ever.
Yep.
You know, his demeanor usually stays pretty even keeled.
Yep.
And you see that in Daniel Jones.
Yep.
When you're talking the New York media. They drafted him. They're berating the media. The kid, not his fault, but getting bashed for no reason because people don't know their football. Okay, and now he gets out there. All of a sudden, people are starting to sing the praise. When is Eli going to not be in there? When are they bringing him? Listen, man. Hopefully these guys got a good head on their shoulders running that team. So.
Sure.
All right, good. I think we had good conversation on that. We're going to wrap up this fantasy talk now, and in this episode, a couple pieces put together, and certainly we're underway with the preseason for the NFL. But I want to start to get in more than not just that, but go back to college here and our next conversations because, well, hell, college football starts this week, right?
Miami and Florida.
What day is that?
Saturday.
So looking forward to that, and we'll talk more about that. But this was good talk. Good talk,
right.
Russ.
Good stuff.
All right.